be licky-fried. We should licky-fry him.
It's f***ing liquefied.
I'm back from outer space, ready to drop on you the top 3 games of the last year. But first, because I feel like getting my editing chops in and cherry-picking some interesting footage, a recap. Number 6, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Dual Destinies. Number 5, Hatsune Miku Project Diva F. Number 4, The Typing of the Dead Overkill. And so, without further ado,
Mr. Drippy!
Are you forgetting someone?
what did Joe Bluth, Dana Scully, and Major Charles Emerson Winchester III have in common? They've all also lent their voices to characters in Studio Ghibli films. That's the kind of water this studio draws, built up by years and years of making particularly wonderful films. Finally, they've turned their pens and brushes to the world of video games with Ni no Kuni: Wrath of the White Witch. As wonderful as this game is, though, there's a certain chunk of the population, myself included, who can call it for what it is: a carbon copy of Dragon Quest VIII. That said, pretty much everyone capable of making that determination is delighted by the prospect of more Dragon Quest VIII, now featuring perhaps the only style of character design more ubiquitous than that of Akira Toriyama. A slice of mid-20th century Americana gets blended with a wild fantasy world where everyone sounds British, magic is yours to command, and puzzles like this Corpus Colossum splitting two-stick affair are no big whoop. There are familiar item crafting mechanics and plenty of side quests and missions to undertake, but rather than the staid lineup of RPG combats, Ni no Kuni keeps things fresh by utilizing a real-time battle system populated by collectible monsters. And speaking of collectible monsters, yep, the goalposts have moved again. It's now 718 and counting. 718. Pokemon X and Y seem to be named fittingly as generations X and Y start to encourage their kids to be the very best like they never were. The dogmatic tone of only having new Pokemon available until you've cleared the Elite Four has been left by the side of the road in favor of a rich blend of old and new, including a new type for the first time since Gold and Silver. Enhanced online features like random ad hoc trades, ever-present access to the global trade system, and plenty of coffee, make this 6th generation of the Pokemon series the most complete to date. But then again, they all are. The real innovation comes in the more out-of-the-way places, like filling in the last few unused type combinations like Ghost Grass, or an attack that is both flying and fighting types, or held items that allow your Pokemon to evolve mid-battle. The breeding mechanics have been overhauled as well, which has helped combat the rising tide of hacked, stat-perfect Pokemon that have been assembling in the shadows. These X and Y versions didn't just keep the base happy, they helped reach out to lapsed players and newbies alike with a more complete experience. Even if the accents in the "This is France honest" Kalos region might not make sense all the time. And speaking of not making sense, if you'd told me 3 years ago that I'd honestly be calling Final Fantasy XIV my game of the year, I'd have laughed you off the street. That train wreck, I'd say it'll never happen. And then, following the complete destruction of the world and a 9-month hiatus, it happened. A new team, led by Naoki Yoshi P. Yoshida, rebuilt the mechanics, the difficulty curve, the payouts, the plot, and turned what was a punchline of a game into an unquestionable success. The last time Final Fantasy XIV happened, they had to give away free subscription time because the game was horrible and they wanted to apologize. This time it was because they had people knocking down their doors, throngs of adventurers far beyond what Square-Enix expected, and they wanted to stay. Stay to experience probably the best Final Fantasy plot since 12, which I'll remind you was 7 years ago. Stay to get their hands dirty crafting or harvesting as a welcome respite from beating down hordes of monsters. Stay because, with its most recent update, the dev team are establishing a breakneck pace for new content by adding a PvP arena, guild housing, even if no one can afford it yet, extreme versions of existing fights just to keep the endgame on its toes. Hell, they even ganked the entire final dungeon of Final Fantasy III and dropped it in with some slight modifications. For rising like a phoenix from the depths of utter mediocrity to something not just respectable but damn fun, especially if you dig Shaft references, Final Fantasy XIV is my game of the year. Strange to say. Now, if you'll excuse me, there's something I've got to do. Da 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 da